These are some of the tools I use. I managed to find them. They haven't been used for a few years. These are the brooches, 5-sided watt clock brooches. That's the size for the first hole I'm going to do. They're tapered, the theory being that you do a bit from one side and a bit from the other side, so that the centre part is slightly higher than the edge. That's the theory. So long as it spins and it's not too tight, that's the main thing. And if I can get in the right place, these holes and so on have to have oil sinks in them to cut those. I've got these homemade D-bits. After I've broached the hole to size, I use one of these, which is a burnisher. It just really is a piece of steel, shiny steel, and that sort of polishes the inside bearing, gets rid of any marks that the brooch might have made. And then when the wheel sits in, it should stay upright but be free to spin, and I will test it again with the frame. I tested each wheel to see they all spin freely, and now I've put the 3 gear wheels together and they spin, but I would like to have seen them freewheel just a little bit better than that. It should come to a gentle stop, but this is just a little bit too slow. I'll have to have another look at some of the bearings. This toothed wheel here is a sort of a ratchet. It's actually Harrison's maintaining. What it does, this little counterweight on there, the teeth engage with a little hook on the end, so that when you wind the clock up, so that the ticking doesn't stop or that it interferes with the escape wheel, you try to wind the clock the wrong way. And that makes sure that the maintaining gear is engaged. And inside there is a spring. And that is enough to keep the clock going while you wind it up. Very clever. Okay, the next thing to look at is the escapement itself. And the bearings, I would have thought would have worn, but it's surprising they were perfectly okay. They just needed a little bit of a shine. Now the way they engage with the escape wheel is controlled by one of these adjusters. What it is the bearing for the end of the escapement is off centre, and by using a screwdriver in there you can adjust the height and the depth that it is into the engaging with the teeth of the escape wheel. Now there's one on the front, the same, and they're both at the very lowest point. So there's no adjustment or very little left to do. So I'll have to hope that they still engage all right, and if they don't, I'll have to make a couple of new ones set at different heights. Anyway, I've still got those to look at, and then to fit. After that, it'll be a question of assembly, I think. There is one other little device to stop you overwinding the clock, and that's this. There's a lever here with a spring, so that as the cable comes round, so it catches the other end of this and gradually goes across, and then that hook on there will engage with the end of this rod here. Now I can turn it round. There's the lever, and there's a little groove cut in it, and this tooth here on the top, that will engage with that when it gets to that point and stop overwinding. As you can see, I've assembled it. I've still got the bronze cabling to wind on, but I can't do that until I've fitted the escapement which goes in from the back, because otherwise this wheel of course would just spin. So just want to have a better look at the engagement with the teeth. They seem to be all right, but I'll just give them a final polish and then assemble it. Now comes the problem of winding on the cable, and it has to go on the drum first, so that when you wind it up, the fusee, it'll turn the spring, but I've got to get it onto the drum first. And needless to say, I don't have a key that fits, so I'm having to use a spanner. That's a bad start. There will be a ratchet on there to stop it slipping, of course. Now I've got to keep it under tension. And try not to cross the wire. Oh, it's a bit of a dog's dinner, but now I can put a little bit of tension on. Right. Now it's a question of winding it up onto the fusee, and I've got to make sure it stays in the groove because the cable is all over the place. So yeah, it's jumped already. Ah well, one thing after another. Well, I had to release the pressure, the tension, so, and I moved the cables along so it's more in line. So let's see how it goes now. So far. The Harrison's maintaining hook is re-engaging half the time. But there it goes again. Because it's affecting the getting round to the, that's it, and this is now engaged and I can't wind up anymore. Right, it's quite keen to start ticking straight away, but this is not quite in line. There it goes. That's a good sign. So I'll let that tick away for a while. Once it's wound right down, I'll be able to set the tension properly on the spring so that it will run for the full week. The chances are it's not tight enough at the moment, not done up enough, and so it'll probably run out before I get to the end of the fusee. So I'll let it tick away for a while. The crutch at the back there is pivoted with a 10BA screw and nut. 10BA, that's the spanner for it. And of course I dropped the nut. Fortunately I've got plenty more. While that's clicking away there, I'm just adjusting the hammer. This is the simple system for the striking 1 on the hour. It's just a simple lever cam, lifts it up and drops it. It's a bit critical that you get it in the right place, so it doesn't strike just before the hour or just after, and also you don't want it to be too much of a hit, or not enough in that case. Well, I can't put the hands on until I put the chapter ring on, and I've added the bell for the time being so that I can get this to strike at the right distance. I don't want too much lift, otherwise it overloads it, tends to slow the clock down. That's going back rather far, so I might reduce that a bit. It's almost run down, it's still ticking away quite happily, but I want to run it right down before I do anything else so that I can get the tension on the spring correct. Now the important thing when I put this on is that it's in line with the little pip that causes the strike. because that will be on the hour then. This hour hand, that can move anywhere. That's the English system, I believe. Right. I can pick it up. Right, the hand should start to move now. Okay. Right, well, we'll carry on until it finishes ticking, and then I can adjust it, and that'll be it. That's it. It's fully unwound now. I don't like it to go any further than that because this is where the cable goes in through a hole, and there's a right angle bend on the cable, and I wouldn't want that to be flexed in any way so that it would stand any chance of breaking in time. So I stop it about there, and that should be the right sort of place to finish. Now all I've got to do is to tension the spring. I know roughly how much to do that from past experience, and then it's a question of putting the pendulum on and adjusting it till it's in beat, and getting the length right so the time is correct. As with the fusee, I don't fully wind this because the same thing happens here. You've got a right angle bend in the cord, that bronze cord. So although it's going to mean a shorter time, rather than risk it, that's as far as I wind it, rather than going right up to the stop. I should have allowed a bit more cable, I think, but hindsight's a wonderful thing. Now that it's in beat, I can set the time accurately, and then after a few hours I'll be able to tell whether it needs shortening or lengthening. I hope it doesn't need lengthening, it's pretty close to the bottom already. So the problem will come when I come to put it on its shelf where it normally resides, because if that's a slightly different level from this one, from my bench, because the bench is dead level, but if my shelf is slightly out, that will immediately put it out of beat, and I'll have to reset it. Well, I left it running overnight, and it's running slightly slow, which is what I'd hoped for, because I couldn't extend the weight down any further. There's hardly any clearance. So it'll go on the shelf now, and it'll take me about a week to get it finally adjusted to as I want it. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching.